psychologists. What was the standard operating procedure for the use of pharmaceuticals in interrogation? What was the standard operating procedure for research? So we don't know. And if I was saying that in 2009, what's over? Think of where we were as of 2006. There was still debate at that point whether the SEER program was the basis of the tactics. In that debate, I'm not saying within the United States government or within the press, but within the human rights community itself. Even within my organization, as of 2006, it was still a cutting-edge theory to say the U.S. military's survival, evasion, resistance, escape program, managed and designed by psychologists, had been reverse engineered and weaponized into what became the enhanced interrogation program. So we faced those two problems. We faced a lack of people and a lack of information. And that's where I sought out that guy. I had read online a seemingly conspiracy theorist blog post by some guy I'd never heard of from the Boston Graduate School of Psychoanalysis, talking about the interest of the American Psychological Association in having the privilege to prescribe medications. And we couldn't, for the life of us at that point, even begin to understand why the APA would go on a crash course, for all intents and purposes, with public opinion, with its colleague organizations, and basically put itself directly head-to-head with the American Medical Association. And so in looking for those answers, I found the blog posts of Stephen Soltz, and he was currently in Australia at the time. And I remember him calling me after I said, I need to speak to you. And I'm sitting in Paul's car, we're parked outside the Charles Hotel in Cambridge. He's going to pick up his mother-in-law, and I just needed the ride. And I get this call. And little did I know that at that point, in that conversation, that probably the most game-changing investigative partnership of the effort to find out what psychologists actually did had begun. And what Dr. Soltz and Dr. Reisner have contributed. In the case of Dr. Reisner, he has been a public face of this movement when no one wanted to stand up and take the heat. More about that in a second. In the case of Dr. Soltz, he has been our chronicler, our question asker, and the person who has held me accountable and has pushed us to do a better job of asking people to do a better job. But let's applause. I could clap for the rest of my life about what these men have done. But there are two others. And at that point, we had two other leaders who are crucial. These guys come in later. But that guy, Dr. Brad Olson, had been one of the first to challenge his colleagues to stand up to a report written by the very command structure inside the military, inside the Central Intelligence Agency, responsible for the cases. And Brad, from the beginning, had done what we had been looking for every single one of you in your profession to do. What he did is he led. He stopped criticizing alone and started getting involved and sitting in a lot of meetings and going to a lot of conferences. And because of that, we now have a referendum. And because of that, we now have all of you engaged in structures that can take your voices and apply them to the profession you're a part of. But then there was the most important person of all. And I know you know I'm looking at you. You. Dr. G. Maria Arrigo. Without her courage to say what happened during the PENS process, none of this would have happened. Steve Reisner and Dr. Arrigo and I met in New York, interestingly, on the 5th anniversary of 9/11 in 2006. We flew Jean Maria to New York because she had the APA PENS listserv. And we sat there eating Chinese food on the floor of Steve Reisner's office, going through these documents. And at that point, we didn't really know what we were looking at. And out of those documents, the 5 of us began to form what eventually became the Coalition for Ethical Psychology. And we had, in the act of courage that Jean Maria committed by showing us her notes and showing us the listserv, we had the Rosetta Stone to begin to track 2 things: the actual operations at the facilities, and the second thing, the institutional collusion of not only the APA, but many other institutions in the U.S. government who had to be involved to make the enhanced interrogation program happen. So I'm skipping around here, but I wanted to introduce the characters before I go through the chronology. And just one more time, not to turn this into a total love fest, but there were a lot of dark moments, and you're going to hear about them in a second. There were a lot of moments where we individually and collectively almost gave up. There were a lot of moments where we fought. There were a lot of moments we were not pleased with one another. But those matter only so much to show that they didn't beat us, that we didn't beat ourselves, and that in the face of people not telling us the truth, in the face of people engaging in division within the APA, we stayed united. And our secret weapon, we thought, was sources inside the U.S. government. We thought our secret weapon that helped us fight torture was being right. And it was none of those things. What our secret weapon was is each other. Our secret weapon was friendship. And so there's another character here. Prior to, and we're going to start going through the chronology, and I'll stop the Hallmark special here. That basically, in the summer of 2006, the APA convention was in New Orleans. And there was a resolution that was proposed then, that I say this with all due respect, was basically like putting a Band-Aid on a sucking chest wound. It was of certain Ghazi principles of human rights with absolutely no enforcement teeth. And PHR supported the sentiments of that resolution, but we wanted to see something that created a standard that put ethics again above the law, interpretation of the anti-torture statute, interpretation of the UN Convention Against Torture, and interpretation of the gutted U.S. interpretation of the Geneva Conventions. And that resolution, frankly, did not do it. And until a resolution did that, we couldn't support it. And we needed to go in there with ammo. And in that ammo was the actual list of participants in the PENS process. And Mark Benjamin, working with PHR, Mark Benjamin of Salon.com, who has been another hero in this story. Now you see, since